Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who has spread out a number of lawnmowers in front of his house.
Tim Longo.
You know, if you've got enough lawnmowers, you might as well use them to, decorate and defend your lawn. That's what I always say.
Yeah, I need more lawnmowers in real life.
I mean, who doesn't?
My lawn. Yeah,
Who doesn't? Who doesn't need more lawnmowers?
I need automated ones that I can just press a button and they go do their thing. I guess they have those now.
I'm sure if they're not here already, they're coming. There'll be a Roomba for.
Oh, they have them.
For lawns.
They actually have industrial ones too that are like
that's terrifying.
The city uses, and they're huge. Not huge, but I mean they're quite large and they look terrifying.
Yeah, like 8x8, that sort of size.
Yeah, and they have like I've seen like the workers sort of shepherding them. Like I guess they can't be left alone. But
you got to corral them at the end of the day. You got to go around with like a robotic border collie. And anyway, what are we here to talk about, Tim?
Zombies.
Oh, good. That's why we're talking about lawnmowers.
Yeah. We're here to talk about Plants versus Zombies. Surprise! You didn't see that coming, unless Brett said so.
I did not. Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. We were looking for something a little different. We were looking at our list. Also, something since we just decided on it yesterday, something that I could get the gist of pretty quickly, because I actually have never played the series we were actually talking pre-show. I've not played a lot of Tower Defense, but I also have not played a lot of PopCap. So it's just kind of like it is a bit of a a blind area for me. And I don't really know why. I do remember playing some of the early games. We'll get into that. But this game came out in 2009. So I'll just kind of quickly refresh, and then we can talk about PopCap and take it from there into the game. We have talked about 2009 in video games before with Arkham Asylum. There are some other related games to that, like Uncharted, to games that we've played, rather, like Uncharted 2, Demon's Souls, Ratchet and Clank, of course. There's a Ratchet and Clank series, one of the future series, I think, kicked off in 2009. Brutal Legend, coming on the heels of Psychonauts, so directly related to the last series. We have not played an Assassin's Creed game, but Assassin's Creed 2 came out. And then some others: Borderlands, Infamous, Dragon Age Origins, Left 4 Dead 2, New Super Mario Brothers Wii, and Bayonetta were all games that we talked about when we talked about 2009 before. So you're kind of firmly in the into the PS3, I think, at this point, more or less. Actually pretty deep, maybe midway through the PS3, or that to early, I guess. Dragon Age Origins, I remember I played on the Xbox 360, so that's the other console at the time, and the Wii, of course, was the real juggernaut of that generation. So for sure. Well, let's just to kind of put it in its time. Of course, I have played the Assassin's Creed games. I was recently replaying the Assassin's Creed 2 games.
You're being humble when you say you have played. I've played
them. I've played them a little bit. But I recently actually was playing the remaster, the Ezio collection, and I stopped in Assassin's Creed 2.
Oh, this is funny. Yeah.
Revelations, because I don't love the tower defense in it. I'm sure I got distracted as well, but it was kind of like, it's not pulling me back. There are things I really like about it, but the defending your the conquered assassins' dens and having a tower defense game in the middle of it was not my favorite thing. And it kind of was a bar to entry of me returning. I was like, I'd have to go back and do that. Because you don't. It's a game where you get them, but you don't keep them unless you defend them. And I think you can at a certain point own them for good, but there's a lot of back and forth, and I just didn't care for it. Anyway, let's move from that. We can maybe come back to it later.
I want to talk about the genre for sure. And
about that. Yeah. That'll definitely touch on it, because there's things about that version that I don't care for that I think are a bit better here. PopCap, founded in 2000. acquired by EA in 2011. We were kind of talking pre-show about whether it's still active, and I guess it sort of is, but it seems like it's more about managing this brand more than anything else. A little bit of Bejeweled in the last 10ish years, but for the most part, it is it is kind of like the IP holder inside of EA, but it and it has multiple studios apparently, but or multiple offices, but I don't really think of it as a kind of going concern in the way that it once was. I can remember after the acquisitions or around the acquisition when the CEO was on the stage with Peggle 2 and he was like rainbows across the sky, and I had no idea what it meant, but it was definitely an era where it's like the hardcore gamers were like, what is this? In the EA presentation at E3 that year. So
yeah
go.
Well, I mean, so I think I might have been one to put this on the list, or maybe it came from the community.
It wouldn't have been me. So it's really, it was you or the community.
Yeah, and I am a big fan of the genre and of this game specifically. I don't think I've even played any of the others, but I think I've played this twice, and just basically because of 2 different platforms. And it's a great mobile game, and I generally have 1 or 2 mobile games always going. So it was in the rotation at one point. And I have a lot of design stuff that I want to talk about while we're playing this, but probably not get into today. But PopCap for me, I was definitely a fan of Peggle as well, and Bejeweled to some degree. But we talked about in prepping what little preparation we did for this series / episode.
You're at least 10 minutes. At least 10
minutes.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. We talked about we did an indie game series because it felt like a blind spot for us on the podcast. And similarly, I don't know if we're going to actually do a full casual game series, but we have talked about how maybe we do some other games in the casual game space, because it is another. Obviously, most of the podcasts we've played, what you might call the traditional core games. And casual games, I just think, cannot be forgotten. And like our blind spot with indie games. And so, I don't know, we'll see where we go. But this one, for me, as far as casual games and for PopCap, is where my brain always goes. I know neither of us are really casual game experts, but I have played a fair amount over the years, because for me, it's always a palate cleanser and kind of like a different mindset that you get in when you're playing them. And there are really well-designed good ones out there. And I think they often get a bad rap as a sort of macro genre, casual games do. And this one is, for me, one of the best designed games for taking a known genre and repackaging it and redesigning it. And I want to talk about Blizzard in a second in relation to this for various reasons. But PopCap, they had Bejeweled, they had this, they had Peggle, and they definitely had other franchises like Zuma, and you mentioned Alchemy and a couple other things.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they got purchased. I mean, they were, for the casual game space.
I mean, Peggle was huge, as was this. Yeah. These were both really, I mean, Bejeweled was really, really big for its space. Yeah. But and that was almost 10 years before this game. I mean, what I was going to say is that I was kind of interested in their more puzzly games, because that's the sort of casual games if I have a game on my phone, it used to be Drop 7, but at a certain point they got they got bought, and I had to get a new phone at some point, and so I lost the things I liked about the game, and I deleted it. Yeah, so I didn't have a backed up version, or it auto updated. I don't recall which, but so there's that, and then the one I currently still have on there is Threes, which is another puzzly sort of feeling game. And of course, as you mentioned, I played Bejeweled and Alchemy back in the day and liked them quite a lot. I used to like Alchemy quite a bit. I went and looked for it today while I was downloading, and I found some free versions or whatever, and who knows how much they really represent the original. they had the right feel, but I was like, how did this game play again? And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah. By the time I figured out how it played, everything had downloaded. I was like, well, never mind. But I definitely remembered, like, and those were browser games, right? They were games that were, in typically, I think, Java probably, or, well, probably not JavaScript at that point, maybe, but I think they were in Java inside a browser VM, and that made it really easy to port them to other casual things like mobile devices, and that was something they had a real strength, and which would have made them attractive to EA as well. I think is because they kind of had that history. They had a lot of stuff on things like MSN games back in
Right.
their early days,
Right.
so
Yeah.
which was
It was a
something
boom.
I would play them, you know.
Yeah, it was a boom, right? There was a, similar to, there's all those big phases of transition, and there's always the sort of steady state platforms, I guess you could say, like PC. Every
Right.
10 years somebody says PC's dead, and then it never seems to die. Consoles are always kind of wavering and doing their thing, and then obviously with iPhone specifically, mobile games blew up, and then more phone carriers started manufacturing things, etc. And casual games had its same thing. I think of Diner Dash, right? I think of
Oh,
some
sure.
other subgenres that emerged that basically got infinite copycats, right? Um, and Bejeweled was one of them. And the thing of Peggle, I feel like, and this is again in our sort of own echo chamber, is that for some reason for PopCap, specifically Bejeweled, Plants vs Zombies most of all, Peggle to some degree, but well, actually to quite a big degree as well, um, and Zuma somewhat too. They had a way of finding a way for this Venn diagram to cross over more than other casual games into core gamer space. So
Mm-hmm.
you had the players who played only casual games,
Right.
and that's a different demographic and different personas, etc. But then you also had some of the games, and Plants vs Zombies, I think, is one of my favorite examples because the crossover is quite large. You have casual gamers playing Plants vs Zombies, but then you also have us playing the same game and appreciating it for different reasons. It's kind of like a Pixar movie, It's like
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
good for the adults, but good for the kids, And PopCap,
Wow.
I don't know if it was a formula they had or what. Peggle was a funny example because it's such a simple concept, but the presentation is so, I don't know. It's got a lot of endorphin rush going on.
Sure. Yeah, they're really good at reward. I
Yeah.
also wanted to talk about at the time because you're talking about, there's a couple things I think about this. One is that, of course, in around this time as this game is coming out, the iPhone is out. I think it was unveiled in 2007, so it probably came out in 2008, something like that. Sounds about right. But originally, and this was a big departure from phones that preceded it. In the kind of Nokia mode or whatever, it didn't have an API. You could not develop things as an independent for the iPhone.
Good
So
point.
that was just an interesting, at about the same time, the iPhone was a walled garden entirely. Like you couldn't even develop for it as an independent. So that was a thing. And they got a lot of pushback about that. And it took a while before they were ready to like open that up.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah. And then the other part um, that I wanted to mention about this company at that time is that part of, I think, their success was they started on PCs and
Mm-hmm.
moved to phones.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have been partly because of the iPhone's availability in that way, availability to develop for. But it also, I think, conventional wisdom, certainly of the time, and maybe even still today, would be, well, if you want to get core gamers on desktops or laptops or whatever, you have to start there and move to the phone. Otherwise, you'll never have any cred with the desktop crowd, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
was the kind of going theory. And I think you saw some of that happening with some independents, some other independents at the time. Like Tower of Goo was on a ton of platforms, but I'm pretty sure it started on PCs, and then was on like the Wii, and ultimately it was something you could play on your iPad. I think, and I had an iPad version at some point. So it's just also an interesting thing of like, part of the way I think it captures a core audience is that it starts, where the core audience is going to accept it, and then
Right.
moves to the place where the core audience would not accept it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, I think in that mobile boom era, there was a need for content, right? And
Yeah.
casual games, there was always, and we are still trying to, publishers are still trying to crack the nut of how do you get core games onto phones that work well. And lately, because the phones are so powerful, it's starting to happen more and more. Like Resident Evil 4, works on everything and still
Well, Fortnite,
generally plays well. High fidelity can be done on them now. But back then it was like, well, like you said, walled garden as well, but also just mobile development was just getting going. And we're not
yeah.
even talking about Facebook games right now, but Facebook games is a whole nother series, really, like Farmville that Farmville kicked off. And that's where
They're
Zynga.
also way harder to be able to play at this point.
Exactly,
A
yeah.
problem with that kind of platform as
Well, and
well.
that's why Zynga pivoted, right? And
Yeah.
Zynga, like PopCap, is another example of this company that had a few early hits in their space, and then it just, they leveraged that capital to do more and more stuff. They had their own, I think, style. I would say about going how they were much more not revenue, but they were much more metrics based in their designs, right?
Yeah, they
Much
were the
more,
ones who really popularized A/B testing in games.
yeah, data driven
Very data
design
driven, yeah, and
from
responding quickly to
yeah,
what the data was telling them as well, which was a
right.
real shift, from others in that space, and one thing that made them very competitive. Yeah.
And it's its own. I mean, it's a valid way to do it. It's not how we would do it, but it's its own art form in a way, right? Its own
Oh, for
type of
sure. Yeah.
design. But it's not what PopCap was doing. PopCap was
Right, and
definitely good on rewards, like you said, good on presentation, good on I would say like identity. Like each game has a really
oh, for sure. Yeah.
clear identity that like hooks you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the
Um,
strongest players in the phone space still do that, like the Clash of Clans or whatever.
mhm.
Have a look, and then of course everybody kind of copies that look,
Yeah, for sure.
or whatever, to try to grab some of their immense margins. I don't like I said, I don't really play phone games, so it's kind of hard for me to
I
describe
play
it
every
more than
day.
that. Yeah, I know. Well, I won't say
um,
I don't. I probably play threes, nearly every day, but I don't. It's a perfect like, I'm waiting for something to heat up in the microwave kind of game. But I don't.
right.
Yeah, I don't dedicate more time than that. You're a handheld player generally, and like I'm not. So
Yeah,
that's
and
also a
it's the
thing.
usual thing where um, I want to be able to play. It's maybe not the healthiest, but I want to be able to play on something at any time. And you always have your phone with you, so I definitely am always searching for. But anyway, we're not here to talk about mobile stuff specifically, but
Right.
it all is interconnected. Um, and to your earlier point about how PopCap started, because a lot of the big casual players did start on browser or PC based. Even like one of the biggest genres on mobile these days is still object
Oh, hidden object.
hidden
Yeah, hidden
object
object.
games, and
Yep.
those started on PC, right? Just as literally browser for sure, but some of them were really just executables.
Right.
Congregate, we can talk about that, and there's a lot of different places to go. The PopCap's games translated well to multiple platforms like mobile, and I think Plants vs Zombies, the mobile version of it, is really still stellar, and a lot of that is because of the design choices they made. I've actually played quite a few other tower defense games on mobile, um, as well of different types, but Plants vs Zombies is still, I think, the best and most uh, I think just very disciplined and focused design around a genre, and that's why I'm kind of coming back to the Blizzard analogies that I'll get to in a second. But yeah, we were kind of debating and hesitating on because of all the EA news right now, because we're here to talk about PopCap, not EA.
Yeah.
But because I don't want to speak for you, but I think we are aligned in that the news is not good
Yeah, it's
news.
not good.
Um, but you know, regardless, EA was a company and is a company that buys other companies, right? That's kind of how they see value in their stocks, etc.
Right.
PopCap was a victim of that.
Yeah, and
And
it's all. I mean, that's their history. I mean, of course, we've played. For example,
so
Ultima.
many.
And that's what happened there, right? I mean, they acquired them and kind of you know messed it up.
Westwood, yeah, Westwood.
Westwood, BioWare to some degree. BioWare, I don't
I
think
don't
is.
know. I think, yeah,
Yeah, I
in the
mean, I
shadow of
don't think you'd
itself.
say what it was. Before it was acquired, and even if they've had some hits in the meantime, like the Mass Effect series, I think was largely under EA, right? But it was not. But but yeah, I mean, today, if you look at BioWare, it's like I don't even know. It was definitely like, oh, there goes another one into EA. I guess that'll shut down, and let's just start the clock now, kind of problem.
Yeah,
And I would not want to be working. I mean, I wouldn't generally want to work for a public company if I could help it, but to now be working for EA as it's taken back private, that's a company I would not like to work for. That's a private company. Um, Again, we
yeah.
won't go into that too much, but it's also that. But last week, I mean, they're just in the news for bad things left, right, and center. Because last week there was CEO earnings were announced, and it was like, oh, he made 38 million, but he laid off all these people, on the game that they cited for giving him a big bonus or whatever. So it's like, ugh, it's just the
Yeah.
worst.
Something's not adding up.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it
it's
never
not
does.
it's not adding up for the people who make the value. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
But let's leave all that aside and just try to enjoy the cartoony fun of this tower defense. Let's go to kind of like, well, there's a couple things you wanted to talk about in terms of tower defense as a thing and where it went to, and also why you compare this to sort of to Blizzard. So pick your poison, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I
Pick
want
your
to talk
poison
about,
P.
yeah, tower defense as a genre, because I think, one of the things I love about the podcast is that we do spend way too much time, probably, but time that we love spending talking deeply about these things that I think we take for granted, right? We say tower defense. You just mentioned it within an Assassin's Creed game. We
Right.
say it like, it's just a common term now, like tower defense. Oh, it's a tower defense mechanics. I mean, we use it day to day. It's like, oh, could we use it? Could we add a tower defense mechanic into this? Blah blah blah. And it's just a thing, right? It's like many subgenres that have been infused into other things, and we've talked about that a lot over the years. RPG elements, right, is another common one.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, that wasn't a thing, but oh, by the way, it's everywhere, and people don't really realize that it wasn't always like that.
Right.
And tower defenses did not exist at one point. I remember, and I want to talk about it because of the like polished, I wouldn't say innovations, but the iteration that they had with Plants vs Zombies. So I want to get to that, but I want to start with where it started from. I remember I was at Crystal Dynamics at the time, and I don't remember whose desk it was, but I think it might have been a friend of ours named Morgan Gray, and he had found desktop tower defense.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the 2 or 3 early games that would be officially called tower defense that blew up. And it was a very simple thing. It was, the aesthetic was you're on a desktop, and I think it was like paper clips or like different desk related items were the units, and you were shooting things that were very in theme of being like on top of a desk. And it was just the simple concept of the enemies moving in a spline of some kind or some path, and you weren't having to worry about anything but placing the defenses. And it was a very simple concept, and we were just addicted, right? Like, all of us were like, what is this? And we all started playing it. But if you take a step back, and as everyone knows, I'm a big RTS fan, and specifically Blizzard RTSs. Brood Wars, StarCraft Brood Wars, Warcraft 3 had modes because their modding tools were so good. The Blizzard always supported user created content. People made similar automated defense games. I don't remember exactly what they called them before tower defense was coined. That was also a genesis of this. And there's many games back in the NES, Atari. Rampart is another one that comes up as a historical example. but wasn't really coined yet. They were kind of maybe glommed into the strategy, quote unquote strategy, genre. But the automated elements of it, obviously, we've talked about the plate spinning of RTSs and how that's not for everybody because they're so stressful.
Yeah.
But what if the enemy units were more predictable and kind of took some of that stress away, where all you're really doing is placing buildings, and it was just one of those genre defining moments where it's like, oh, this is some, and it came in such an organic way because of the Blizzard background, and Blizzard will come back up because of who one of the lead designers on Plants vs Zombies. And then you have Defense of the Ancients, which was
Right.
a mod in Warcraft 3 where you have minions who are automated, and you're not placing defenses in the same way, but there are some in placed elements. And that is where MOBAs come from. So it's like
nothing really came of that, right? Not a big thing at all.
exactly, yeah, that totally died.
Yeah.
And so this, and it's hilarious to me to think back of Desktop Tower Defense, which is such a simple game. Look it up if you haven't seen it. And I think it's probably still playable in a browser form or something. And yes, there were other things in the mods like Warcraft 3 and stuff that were also part of the genesis of this, but these simple concepts that flourish, and people know a good, cool, new idea when they see it, and then they find ways to make it better. And that's what leads me to Plants vs Zombies, because
I mean, one other thing about this, as a developer looking at an RTS, that's a tough hill to climb. If you want to make one, right? There's a lot involved, especially the AI, the strategic level of AI, tactical level of AI, like for pathfinding units or whatever. Like, there's a lot involved, especially if you're going to try to iterate on other ideas people have done. But if you pull back of like, what if we didn't have to do the strategy part, or that even really the tactical part, if we could just like script all that part, you kind of like, you're stripping away a thing. And sometimes that's a good approach to find something fresh, as I think we've talked about in the past, of like, what if you just took out something that's hard to do? I mean, we talked about it with walking simulators. Like, well, yeah, what if we took out all the combat of these first-person games, right? What if it, instead of a first-person shooter, was a first-person look at stuff in the houser? And it becomes like, it's like just taking out that element that does put off a large part of your audience. Like, I mean, like you said, I mean, I think of an RTS and I'm like, oh, if I want to sit down and play for an RTS, I'm in there for an hour or two, at a time. Whereas a tower defense game is like, I want to play a level that might take 10 minutes, most of the time, successful or, in success or failure. So there's also that, like, both from a developer and a player perspective, the investment is way lower, which of course, casual game. Anyway, back to you. But I just like when you were talking about RTS, I was like, okay, yeah, but I'm like, thinking of making an RTS makes me go, oh my God, I don't know how I would approach that, because there's so much to do. And I'm like, but I would know how to make one of these, and so
exactly. It's a great point, because obviously we do want to focus on the development aspects as well on the podcast. And to your point, I never thought about this. I don't have any evidence of this or talked to any modders about it, but I would think that some of the genesis of that for Warcraft 3 or StarCraft mods may also be that, right? Of like, yes, they have the core RTS, but they're also like, these are just, modders who are not maybe completely professional developers or something. And then they're looking at things that they know they can do without having to, so it's focusing. And then the good thing to your point about like, RTSs are a commitment, but when you have the subgenre like this popped up, it's like, well, you get both. You can sit down for 2 hours and play if you feel like it, but then if you don't, and actually one of my favorite, they actually ended up, this is ironically another Blizzard game, but they ended up calling it, which I think is very clever, and it is accurate, a tower offense game. It's called Warcraft Rumble, and it unfortunately, Blizzard I think is kind of sunsetting it. I guess it didn't do as well as it, but it's a very good game, I think, and very polished. And but it's playing Warcraft in a very focused way for me. So it kind of checks that box, like a game is 3 minutes, you
Mm.
know, and but it has like all the elements and the character of playing a Warcraft RTS, but in a very simple way. But there's still some depth in there. I think it's a really well designed game. So I'm really bummed that
Yeah.
it.
I mean, some of
But
the other areas where you have stuff like this is like the auto chess type stuff, and
right,
that's a
right,
more modern version in the sense of being like in the last 10 years maybe
yep.
instead, right? But
People
it's just
copy that too.
yep, it's a similar trend of just like somebody thought of a way. I think that one might have started with League, which is of course a
I think
MOBA.
so. There was that company that did they
I
really
mean,
blew up.
they may have done seen it with something else like the desktop event thing that you were describing, defense, and kind of said, oh, there's something here, and kind of run with it. But it's the one that I remember hearing about anyway.
Right,
So because I know
right.
Valve did one as well, though I don't remember what it was called. And I
Yeah,
don't think
Valve
it's still
tried
around.
one. I think, yeah, and Riot did end up doing their own. Um, I'm trying to think of the name of that company. That it was a small, I think, ex modders who
Mm,
or modders at the time, just a new development group that.
yep. Yeah, probably similarly motivated.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
no,
yeah. It was like, how do we focus things? So
auto battlers. So
yeah. So it's just a really interesting when you really like pull on the thread. And as we started playing Plants vs Zombies, as I started playing it, I all of this basically all the reasons I think I put it on the list came flooding back to me, and I forgot. I was like, oh right, and then this, and then this, and then it turns out George Fan, who was a lead designer, I believe, on Plants vs Zombies, was
yep.
hired from Blizzard, and he wasn't working, I don't think, on Warcraft, but um, he had similar sensibilities, and wanted to work at Blizzard. I think was really excited to be there, but then was pulled away, and so I not in like all the aesthetics of it all, but there's some polish level here that reminds me of Blizzard 2, right? Or of that, and I think again, PopCap had their version of that. So I don't mean to make it about Blizzard, but it's funny to pull on these threads and see where they go. For me, at least, and maybe some of this is just my own personal story about it because of you know remembering desktop tower defense and all this. But then, like the funny thing about this genre is, for anyone who does still play, or is aware of the mobile game space, which I still, I go to the App Store game section, probably once a month, and I do scrub and see what's new and out there. There are still a lot of tower defense games, and
Oh,
some
I'm
of them
sure.
have
Yeah.
even been simplified even more, where you don't even get to choose where to put stuff. So it's all monetization based, unfortunately, right? So it's just about they're really optimizing, and they're
Right. Right.
almost like clicker games at this point.
Right.
But they have all of the Peggle aspects of just like the splendor, right? Just like combat and explosions, and you're just doing very simple things, but at its core, it's a tower defense game. It's just they keep simplifying it and simplifying it. So, but Plants vs Zombies, I think, is the best version, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit pre-show because I did have, other than the Assassin's Creed, one, which again is, I mean, you have fewer choices, I think, than in most tower defense
Yeah, how
games.
does that one work? Because you've brought that up
So
before, but I've never
yeah,
seen it.
so the idea is like because you're assassins, you're on the rooftops, and you're basically the commander, and you, in a similar way, you have a certain amount of money you can spend on things, and it's like it's building over time based on units killed and things like that. And they're basically coming down the street, because they're the whatever in, Byzantium or whatever, Constantinople, I guess. So like the whatever those are, Janissaries or something, are coming down the streets to attack, and you are putting like, I'm going to put a rifleman there, and I'm going to put an assassin there who's going to do a jump down on the guy kind of assassination.
Oh, you're placing humans,
Yeah, you're placing other assassins who, in
other
theory, work
assassins.
for you. Yeah,
Oh, got it.
and they just have different jobs that they do. So there's, ones, and you can play. You can also place barricades and things like that in the street. And I think the idea is like that they're, the assassins, kind of work as for the common people, and they kind of, will get help from them to drag in blockades of different things. So it's basically like slow them down so that you can pick them off, and they just ultimately they're bringing, like a tank. It's not a tank, but it's like a tank. I don't remember. It's like, things on, guys on elephants or something. But the other one I played was Pixel Junk Monsters, and
Yeah.
it had that sort of finicky, like place something exactly right. I was, sort of describing in pre-show, like you could sort of see, I think, its field of fire when you placed it, and like I don't remember if you
Yeah.
could rotate them, but for me, it was like I like the puzzle aspect of it, but there were times where it's like where it got to be like an RTS, where it's like it was a very refined, like more edging into the core
Right.
gamer
I
type of
remember. Yeah.
experience.
I played it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very like, okay, you got to place it down, but you really got to think about your field of fire when you're placing it down. Like moving something just a few pixels might make a big difference in terms of what it can hit,
Yeah.
and and of course, if you mess up, and one enemy gets through, you're not going to get the achievement, which of course what I was looking for, or the trophy, I guess. And so as the levels got harder, towards the end of the game, I was just like, okay, this is more than I want to do now.
Right.
Um, because there would be like that that high penalty of failure of like I took all this time meticulously setting this thing up, and then one guy got through,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there goes 45 minutes. So I was a little bit daunted to play Plants vs Zombies, but I did remember it was a lot simpler, and so I was a little less worried.
Yeah. And I think we'll get into it, but I think their escalation curve is very good in this game, and it's probably a lot of playtesting, a lot of tuning. So we'll talk about that more as we go, and maybe even next episode. But because I don't even know if we'll get that far today. But to your point, like with Pixel Junk Monsters, I think we've probably said this before, but I think the sign of a good new subgenre or genre is that it can really accommodate many different player types, right? You can take, even though the, like we talked about earlier, it was about extracting things from the RTS model and making it simpler. People always find a way to make it harder.
Yeah.
It's like you can take, so it's like, but also you can find ways to make it more accessible, in my opinion, which again we'll get to. Plants vs Zombies does mainly focus on that, but I think they also find clever ways to add challenge in a safe way too. So I feel like they get to have their cake and eat it too. But Pixel Junk's an example. What's another one? Oh, one other one that I really had a lot of good fun with, and we've mentioned Reed Knight on the podcast before, a friend of the podcast, and we've had him on as a guest. He and I played it co-op. Is the Orcs Must Die series, and that is more of like you're playing a third-person avatar and you're running around a dungeon, and the orcs are invading, but there's tower defense elements. So it's like a kind of a nice hybrid.
I think I played one that is a little bit like that. That's Warhammer. Is that Vermintide? Is kind of like that.
Vermintide, yeah. It has horde elements. I don't know if it does it have like tower defensey?
I didn't get that
it
far.
Might have both.
It made me a little motion sick, so I didn't make it that far.
Yeah. That might be more horde, like Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
But they might. I forget if it had. It might have had emplacements too, which probably it did. And that's again where genres start blending. Like the tower defense, like I would warrant that tower defense elements creep in to especially shooter action games in the form of classes or roles, right? Because some classes like Torbjorn in Overwatch.
You're just making that up. I don't.
Nope, Torbjorn. He's a dwarf, and he has emplacements, right? So he's like a mini. It's a hero shooter, but he is the guy that puts down emplacements in certain places to defend. So those are just different elements,
Right.
It's just all the different Venn diagrams I think are very fascinating, but yeah, I mean, it's just people find ways to iterate on a subgenre and do interesting, weird things with it, like Orcs Must Die or like Pixel Junk Monsters. And to your point, they can still make them very core. Ironically, something that was intended to be less core can be made core again, I guess.
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah,
just
we can always find ways to be exclusionary here in the games development industry. I'm
yeah,
yeah, no doubt
yeah.
about that. So, not always to our credit. Um, yeah, for sure. Did you kind of cover everything you wanted to talk about as far as Blizzard goes in terms of like the boiling it
Yeah,
down?
I
You got
think
that
so. I
covered?
think it was
Okay.
mainly the legacy stuff, and I wanted to get to MOBAs, of course, and we all know how
Yeah.
that went. But the minions and MOBAs are obviously the automated, and of course you are placing um, in most MOBAs. You're building up some of those defenses as well. So, and it's a weird hybrid because you have those RPG elements and you have an avatar that you're character that you're controlling in real time as well. So it's like again a different form of that tower defense with some RTS elements with some RPG elements. So there's no, it's like kind of like no duh to me. Like when you say those genres together, it's like sounds hard and complicated and weird. Like why would you merge all those together? But in retrospect, you're like, yeah, those that does sound like it could be a cool game. And now it's one of the biggest genres. So
To date, I have neither seen nor played a MOBA of any kind. So it's a
well, I know what our next game
oh
is.
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not going to be able to get my click rate up. My clicks per minute are just not high enough. I am not. I'm not ready for what Idle Thumbs used to call a Lord's management game. So we'll
Well, I
see.
mean, there's different versions too. There's
Yeah. Yep.
there's more accessible versions as well, and that's another example of a subgenre that, or now I'd say a full genre that that is finding different audiences.
It's the multiplayer online part of it that I'm like,
They have PVE. We'll do
uh-huh.
it. We could co-op it.
Hmm. Let's
I'm not trying to force it on you.
yeah, I
Let's
don't
get
see
back to Plants vs
I'm
Zombies.
not seeing it happen. Let's get to Plants vs Zombies. This is of course like I mean it's not broadly explained. You kind of get the concept right out of the gate. But the zombies being the enemy kind of tells you everything you need to know about how they've kind of simplified, some of the choices here in that while I'm sure we're going to get a lot of different varieties of both plants and zombies, you are basically planting obviously stationary features to deal with this menace. And I do really appreciate that they're basically they can easily lead you into that. Like the first level is like, here's one lane, just got to worry about
Yeah,
this one lane,
yeah, that
and they
was
can
good.
introduce you to the simple mechanics. At least to for the first 10 levels or whatever, they're all I mean you're getting a bunch of different plants, but the fundamental mechanic is sunlight just naturally drops from the sky, so that's part of your economy. But you can also spend that the drops of sunshine that you're getting that way to plant flowers that generate more sunflowers, of course. There's a lot of that kind of wit, and you can use those to spend on other types as well. And all of these things, you can't just place them based on the money. They also have cooldowns, so you kind of actually have to prepare a little bit ahead. You have to anticipate where the zombies might be coming from, down which lanes they will be coming. Ultimately, they're going to come down all of them eventually, so you might as well feel prepared. But in the early going, it's kind of like, well, I want to be very selective because I don't have a lot of resources, and I want to, as I build up, I want to protect the things that I've already built, but et cetera. But put some defenses out there and all of that. And it's really slick. I mean, they have a great style, and we are playing the Game of the Year edition. For anybody trying to follow along, it's available on Steam. And I mean, it was easy to drop in. It was very appealing. It had the same like Tower of Goo kind of look, where it's very approachable, bright colors, bold outlines, good silhouettes, all of that stuff. What are the first things you take away when you sit down to play the game?
Yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, it's that onboarding polish is always something that I appreciate and look for, and remember being a good hook. To your point about like the lanes, and then laying down the sod, right, rolling out the sod for each lane they add, and having been a fan of the genre before playing and still being a fan today, I remember playing Plants vs Zombies and thinking first of all, like we talked about earlier, PopCap has always been good at sort of game identity and characterization of the game. And this one, the humor's there, right? The art direction's really pure. The music and the audio is really good, and it's a very cohesive package. And it's to your earlier, snark. It's like it's such a silly idea, like Plants versus Zombies. And I always appreciate those sorts of swings because it sticks in your head. Like orcs must die. Yeah, of course, orcs must die. Like it's a I know what I'm doing. Yes, it's orcs. It's medieval, whatever, or fantasy. But Plants vs Zombies is like, what's the? Oh, okay, plants are stationary. Zombies move slow. And the thing about it though is that as soon as you start the game, you're like everything starts to make sense based on these decisions they made. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yes, of course, I plant a plant and I need a shovel to uproot it, but generally it's going to stay there. And the zombies are manageable, right? At least for now. And it's a silly concept that they wrapped this context around. I think Dave, is that the name of the
Yeah, the neighbor.
homeowner?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No, you name your own home owner, but you have a neighbor named Crazy
oh,
Dave.
he's the neighbor. Okay,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So you mentioned the lawnmowers, and it's just when you have a sort of core conceit that usually comes out through a incubation period of some kind and iteration, but once they had those decisions made, like things start cascading from there. Oh, okay, let's put a cone on the head of a zombie. Same old zombie, but you put a cone on it and it's harder to kill. It's like a helmet.
Right.
And then, like you said, with sunflowers, right? You present a sunflower. Of course, I get what that's going to do, and each plant, generally has a pretty good, clear, like you said, silhouette of design. But for me, it was really like not just the purity of identity of the game, but the onboarding. When that's really good, I really get hooked often because it's one of those before you know it, you've learned the game and you're just going. And for me, this game, even playing it a third time now, I just want it's like just one more game, just one more level, because they're short enough. And the other thing I forgot to mention when we talked about tower defense as a genre, one of the things I love about the genre that this game does really well, I think, but you definitely put it, you nailed you nailed it on something you said in pre-show that you'll talk about later as far as one of your concerns, which I do agree with this game. But generally, tower defense games are great at that moment in an RTS when you've set up your whole base and it feels impenetrable.
Right.
But it takes so much work, like you said earlier, in an RTS to do that.
Yeah.
But in a tower defense, it's a lot less work to feel like, oh, those zombies are not getting through because I've set them perfectly.
Yeah, that is the thing that I do really appreciate about it, because I do remember. I mean, I have not played other than for the cast. I hadn't really played RTSs in like 20 years, right? It's been 25 years probably really since I was playing them, because StarCraft was like the last one that I had played a lot of. And even though I play a little bit of some things or whatever, but I the last one I really played a lot of was StarCraft. And that moment when you've set up a Terran base where you've just got like missile and regular turrets just like threaded through everything, and nothing can get near you. Oh, it's so good, So but it is a it's a hard hill to climb, and then of course it's easy to feel set back, and you might maybe you're not quick, and like certainly if I were to play competitively, I just would get destroyed because I focus on like I need the AI to have the room for me to be like very meticulously like planning, and I don't feel like I can do that at the speed that would be required to play competitively, right? So
Age of Empires was tended to be a little bit better at that when it comes to what RTS players would call turtling, right? And turtling is a strategy, and it can work, and it's wonderful when you get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm not getting in that base, that person turtled. But like you said, it's hard to do and easy to, like, one false move and it could all go wrong.
Right.
But I didn't never think about this until you just described what you like about it. Tower defense games are basically turtling. It's like they've just
Yep.
taken
Yeah.
turtling and made it a game.
They made it an art form.
Yeah, and with Plants vs Zombies, it's like when you have all your sunflowers out, all of your pea shooters, all and you just have your back defenses are just like, and then the final onslaught at the end of every level. Just to explain it for those who haven't played, there's like a slow trickle right through each lane, and then at the end, and sometimes in the middle as well. There's sometimes two phases of a huge horde comes in, and the music changes, and they're like, "I hope you're ready because here they come," and you got to like the last defense. And if you're really set up well and that thing hits and you're just confident and you're just like, oh, they're not getting through, maybe place a cherry bomb just for good measure. And you just feel so good. It's just like the endorphins are going. I'm like, I turtled and I stopped all of those zombies, didn't even know what hit them, even though you're doing fairly simple things,
Yeah.
but it feels gratifying.
Yeah, no, I mean it also is very I mean the zombies are a great choice for that because the problem is never the one zombie in a zombie,
Right.
zombie apocalypse whatever, in a book, movie, TV show. The problem is when a few of them start to get together, right? And so it has this natural build towards the thing you dread in that fiction, and you're going to overpower it, right? And that's the big reward, right? Is that you've managed to do the thing that is the terrible thing. It's sort of like in The Birds. There's a great scene in The Birds where she's sort of sitting on a bench or something, and behind her there's like one bird on a
Yeah. We just
playground.
watched it last Halloween. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then there's two, and she turns around again. Now there's six, and then she turns around. It's like 100.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's how I remember it, right? But that's how the game also feels. Is like I don't even know how many zombies are coming, but I'm ready. In a way that Tippy Hedren probably was not. So.
And the music is so good.
And that, folks, is Dev Game Club. You get a Tippy Hedren reference. So.
That was unexpected.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. We got from zombies to birds to Tippy Head.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Check out The Birds, everybody.
Good movie. Holds up.
Yeah, it does. But then the music, when the music kicks in that last horde move, I don't know. It's just a really well polished.
Yeah, it's a great package.
Well polished package, and it only gets better, in my opinion. And we'll talk about next time as we get deeper in, maybe. But because they made those just so simple but weird and kind of like out of left field decisions of plants and zombies. Some of those decisions help designers with cascading through what kind of archetypes they're going to need, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't all. I don't know. Not everyone agrees with me / us on this, but design can come from anywhere. It doesn't. It's not for those who think that it's all about game designers and such. It's not. It's about anywhere. And art can sometimes come up with a great design idea for gameplay. And I have a feeling on this game that was the case. Where it was definitely coming from a bunch of different areas. I could be wrong. I have no evidence either way. But like, for instance, when this was, maybe they did a paper prototype, or maybe they did.
Yeah. I was going to say, it makes me think of Paper Dolls in terms of how the zombies are kind of put together, because you have, as you already mentioned, like the cone one, and I know there's going to be all kinds of wacky ones to come, but it's like, it's just the same, but with like, what are those things called? Color forms or whatever. It's just got the thing stuck to its head, right? Because of the 2D presentation, right? It's like you just put the cone in front of its face, and it's like, well, now it's a zombie. It's not a different piece of art, because now they can basically animate / move those things that kind of independently. Like you can have stages of the cone that are kind of separate from the stages of the zombie. It's just the same zombie under there. It's not like a complicated thing to do to add this stuff to it, which makes it easy to prototype ideas as well. Which is just like, what if I put a football helmet on it? It's even tougher or whatever. You can see that stuff coming.
Yeah, so. Or bucket, or
yeah. I've seen the buckets as well.
Yeah, pole vaulter, right? Yep. Like we're going to see a lot of zombie archetypes and plant archetypes that will come through that we'll talk about next time, that I think are just really, really chef's kiss design decisions on simple things. Again, I think it's a little bit the reason well, maybe I mentioned this in pre-show. I forget if I already mentioned Portal, but I'm definitely not going to put it in the Portal camp per se. But I do think that this game is a good, you know, master class on onboarding as well. In that
Mm.
they found a way to very easily and succinctly introduce you to things that you're going to be obviously knowing what they do. So pole vaulter is an example I want to bring up. Like,
So I
okay,
thought he was a javelin thrower first. So I was like, oh, he's going to throw,
oh,
he's going to take out my sunflowers that are in
right,
the back,
yeah.
So my initial thought was he's going to get close enough that he can throw that thing. But so I was surprised.
Okay, fair point. That's fair
Yeah.
criticism. That's a fair feedback.
Yeah.
I can see others being confused by that. Yeah,
Because you
that's really
don't,
fun.
one point about that is
He's
that,
holding it more like a pole vault, I'll say though. But
yeah,
'cause I
he
think
probably
the
is. But
javelin,
like, I didn't see him for very long before I registered as javelin. Because at the beginning of a level, you see your house and then it sort of pans to the right and you see the zombies kind of amassed. And so
yeah,
you only get kind of a quick look, and that's when you might see a new type, right?
yeah,
And so my first impression was, oh, he has a javelin. Um, because I didn't have enough time with it to register he's holding it like a pole vaulter or that it's super long
fair,
for
totally.
for a
Yeah.
javelin. So sometimes the initial read is not there. I mean, it didn't take long, obviously, before I'm like, oh, he went right over my walnut. Again, folks, this is where
It's
you're gonna
good.
get these things. He went,
It's so
oh,
good.
I see, it's a pole vault. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
but he only has
he
one
only does
pole,
it
right?
once, right? He loses
So
the
he does
pole after
one.
that.
So
Yeah.
the strategy of like, okay, I'm going to put one up early, so he loses it. So then he goes slower after he loses his pole vaulting ability. So there's just like there's all these little nuances that have a big impact on strategy.
Yeah.
Even though this is technically a strategy game, it is strategy light. And my other favorite example that you saw as well from the zombies, and then we can move on or whatever, or start closing down. But um, we talked about the helmets, which are like you have to break through the helmets of different types before you get to the zombies' health.
Right.
So it obviously just elongates it, but it's a very clear tell on what's going on,
Right.
and it's very binary when the helmet's knocked off. And then it becomes a regular zombie because the helmet is gone, right? So now you know, okay, that zombie has this much health roughly.
Right.
But the other example that I love is like probably somebody said, "Hey, we need a zombie because the zombies are very state based. It's like they're in one state and then they're in another state, and you have to kind of that's part of the plate spinning because they're only coming down one lane rather than other tower defense games where they might be, meandering a path."
Right. Right.
But somebody said, "Oh, we need one in their second state to run faster."
Mm.
And so, okay, I can imagine the brainstorm where they're like, okay, what if he's reading a paper
Right. Right.
and
Right.
then you destroy the paper and then he gets mad and then he starts sprinting at you?
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, what? But
Yeah.
it's so on brand and it's so zany, but it's so clear from a gameplay perspective once you see it happen once. And to your point, they don't train you this other ways, which is a bad thing. Like you have to learn through some of that. Like, okay, I have to see them do the thing. Pole vault is another example. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of two minds of that because you may not be prepared if you didn't realize he was going to run faster. But I
Well,
guess
there's a moment of joy there that I think is finally.
that's true.
Oh, you I didn't see where that was going, and the pole vault was a
Fair. Yeah.
delightful moment for me. The newspaper one I had kind of figured on, but so that that's because of the kind of comic nature of the whole thing. It's like, who cares, right?
Fair.
And
Yeah.
also the levels are short, so
The
if I
stakes are
didn't
low
understand
too.
the mechanic, stakes are low. So yeah, I mean, I can already see the ways that they have sort of a certain number of affordances for zombies so far, in terms of the different speeds and whether they're protected or how they can move across spaces and things like that. So you see that kind of coming, and I'm really curious to see how much they can sustain that. Like how much, well, not even so much because I'm sure you can come up with tons of ideas. It's more of like how will they balance, player load, cognitive load on like all the different zombie types and things like that. I'm just really curious to see because I can see a couple ways that might go. Like, oh, sort of in the early game, it's these types, and then they kind of slowly shift to these types, which are more advanced, and then so you don't really need to know about all of them at one time. You kind of like need to know about these 10, and then these 10, and then these 10, or whatever. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. And the same with the plants, same sort of thing there. We're already seeing that you have plants that are basically repelling those various affordances that the zombies have by having more fire, quicker firepower, or shooting a freezing pea or whatever, and the different things, or a wall and or explosion, et cetera. There's all those things they're doing. But I do worry, and I'll just put this here to talk about next time, because we'll see what happens with this, is that the one choice so far that I've been like, I don't know about that one, has been at the beginning of a level, you are choosing which of your seeds you're going to take into battle. And there's like 8 to 10 of them. I don't remember exactly how many, but it's in that kind of neighborhood.
You'll get a lot.
And that's more than the types of seeds that you have acquired. So you always have your shovel utility. You're always going to want to take the sunflowers, I guess. But then there's a big group of things that's like, do I take the cheaper thing that I can probably put more out of pretty quickly, versus the more powerful one, but if I lose it, I'll be really annoyed, kind of choices you're making. So it's I'm just curious if it's a game that a player will choose a strategy for and then just stop exploring the new types as they come in. If there are more new types, so
it could. I think it is. I would say it's a potential weakness. It's they're trying to pepper in some of the deck building card elements, right, in a way of like, okay, you can't take everything. Choose your cards, which is also similar to the Warcraft game I mentioned, Warcraft Rumble, which is my understanding. I haven't played it. Is basically what Clash Royale, which was also another Clash of Clans, super hit, but is similar. Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. You do eventually get a lot of plants to choose from. So it is a bit of analysis paralysis problem at that point, and I think you'll fall into some ruts. I'm guessing that maybe it was for them a little bit more of like maybe replayability, or maybe player type, like maybe there's some strategies that are more turtle strategies than others, depending on who you bring, you can be more aggressive. So yeah, it's not perfect in that regard, but and the other thing to just quickly mention, we'll probably talk about more, is they have some different sort of like modes. They have a mode where they automatically have a conveyor belt of units that they're giving you, so you don't get to pick.
Right.
So they found some ways to mix it up.
That's a good way to show something you maybe haven't been using, right, or to show a different side of something you have been using but you didn't know could do that. So that's kind of cool. But I will mark down that other mode as something to talk about more next time, because we'll probably have seen it more so far. So they basically call it, your neighbor comes by and says it's like bowling, it's in the level after you get the shovel, and he says, well, dig up your yard so you can bowl the zombies down, and then you're throwing, I think, the walnuts, and they just roll and take out the enemies that are coming. It's the same thing, same mechanics are working, where things with protection will take multiple hits, and the things actually bounce, the walnuts or whatever actually bounce off them, so that you might hit some others, and so you get some sort of you spread out the damage. And so it's a cute variety thing, but I hadn't thought of it as a potential vector for showing you the other stuff. Anyway, we'll get to that next week. For now, I think we'll just move on to our outro. I am glad to be playing this one. It is one of those games where I feel like I should have known more about this game, but I just, for whatever reason, never got around to it. I don't know, when it came out, I was at Bethesda and very heads down, I imagine. So maybe just
it's not. I mean, I don't think it's one that is an obvious must play for a while.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just such a funny. It did well. It did really well for them.
Oh yeah, yeah. This and Peggle.
It is, I think, a little bit of, you got to play it to appreciate it. If you don't, if you don't know much about it, I can see how people would be like, why do I want to play that?
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
For sure. Well, you can send us email to tell us your thoughts about plants and zombies and anything in between in their eternal fight at devgameclub@gmail.com. We also love to get your reviews and read them out here on the air. If they're on some service we don't use or don't have access to, then please just email them as well so that we can read them out to folks. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host Twitch is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
With the smoky skies, you are continuing to take a little time off this week as summer dog days continue.
I'm still on a break. Yeah.
But if you want to track that, you can either follow him there or you can join our fan run Discord where announcements are made when either of us go live on Twitch. Don't hold your breath for mine. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by the immortal Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by Friendly Cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, merch store, Discord, a number of bots, including one of Tim's dogs barking, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun giving yourself additional sun this week, and good night.
Good night.